earlier, our today event, which is an online workshop. It's the second event in the series on housing with Angie Pham, one of my good friend, as part of diverse communities thriving in equity. And it's supported by Waterloo Region Community Foundation, or abbreviation WRCF. And this event is a virtual 2-day, and this is the second day, as I mentioned. It's taking place in our local neighborhood in Waterloo Region. And its main goals are to empower women in need from diverse backgrounds, foster economic well-being and social inclusion, which advancing racial equity in Waterloo Region. And a small introduction to Angie Pham, but I would like to invite her so she can give more introduction, of course. So, okay. And I noted down Angie's introduction. I will just, okay. Angie Pham is a social worker and a community development worker at Waterloo Region Community Legal Services. She is also a member board of directors at Family and Children's Services of the Waterloo Region. She received her Master of Social Work at Wilfrid Laurier University. She just graduated, if I'm not wrong, a few months back. Congratulations. Wonderful. She has worked in the social work sector for over, I guess, more 15 years, I'm just guessing, supporting individuals living with diverse needs. She's committed to supporting vulnerable populations and helping people to empower themselves. Thank you so much, Angie, for being with us today with you.
Thank you, Seville, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm always very shy when people read my resume.
It's a wonderful resume. Don't be shy.
What my resume never tells you is I don't sleep very much. So this morning I am a little tired. If I talk too fast, please feel free to stop me. Raise your hand or unmute and ask me to repeat. You're also welcome to put any questions you have for me in the chat. And Seville, if you don't mind, if I don't see the questions in the chat, if you can just interrupt me and feel free to ask.
Sure,
so thank you for having me this morning. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. I want this to be kind of a conversation. I'm sharing information with you today. In no way am I an expert. I'm not a lawyer. So as I share information on some legal rights today, I also want this to be a conversation. So I will use a PowerPoint just to guide us today. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep, we can see it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So again, I'm a worker. I'm a community development worker at Legal Services of Waterloo Region. And I'm going to share a little information about my workplace and then give you a little bit of information about your legal rights as a tenant if you are renting in the region. So again, nice to meet you. A little information about myself. Ooh. My parents also were refugees to Canada a long time ago. I was born in Canada, but my parents still speak Vietnamese to me dominantly at home. And so I still consider English my second language. So again, a disclaimer, any information I share with you today is considered legal information and not legal advice. And I'll explain what the difference is because people always ask. But lastly, just a reminder, I am a social worker, not a lawyer. So I will try my best to answer any questions you have. Anything too complicated for me, I will share with you afterwards. I have my coworker share with you. So what is a community, sorry, I'm just gonna move some things around the screen. A community legal clinic. So we are funded by Legal Aid Ontario, which is an organization funded by the government. So we ourselves are a nonprofit, and we provide all of our services for free. There's 76 similar clinics like mine across the province of Ontario. And again, we are a nonprofit organization governed by a board of directors made up of community members like yourselves. And every community in Ontario is serviced by a clinic. So I understand that most of you live around the Waterloo region, but if you do move outside of the region, there will still be a community legal clinic to support you if you need it. And Toronto, being so big and so central to Ontario, has 17 specialty clinics itself. So we have a clinic based on like workers' injuries, one for specialized in youth, one for human rights issues, whereas my legal clinic in Waterloo Region is mostly on housing and employment. So again, I will get into that. Okay. My team is consisting of lawyers, paralegals, social workers like me, and office admin. We have about 17 people on our team. If you prefer to speak another language, because legal matters are complicated and you want to make sure all of the information you provide is correct, you can ask for an interpretation, and any language is fine. But the only thing is you'd have to call and make an appointment so that we can schedule an interpreter through the phone. And again, we only provide services to low-income individuals and families who meet our financial eligibility. So if you're a tenant renting from a landlord, we would only support you, never the landlord. Same thing, if you're a worker, we only support workers, not employers. And our current catchment area is all of the Waterloo region. So that consists of the city of Waterloo, city of Kitchener, city of Cambridge, and then the 4 townships around us. So that Woolwich, Wellesley, Wilmot, and North Dumfries. If anyone is joining us from towns like St. Jacobs, Elmira, what else? Oh, like all those little towns around us, then we also would provide services. Even though it seems really far, we still can support. And we have recently started what we call mobile clinics. So we are going to these townships, to organizations in these townships to provide our services on like a monthly schedule. So these are the locations if anyone is outside of the main cities and it's difficult for you to travel into Kitchener, which is where our main office is. We can also be accessed through these locations. So Air Library, Woolwich Community Services in Elmira, Wellesley Branch Library, and Wilmot Family Resource Center for New Hamburg. And these are all booked online. So I told you before I can only provide legal information, and I'm going to explain the difference. So our team can provide legal information, legal support or advice, and legal representation. Legal information is if you just want to know the basic information about the law. For example, what are your rights if you're a tenant and you need repairs from your landlord? So I can give you that information. However, legal support or advice is very, very specific to your individual case. So if you have conflict with your landlord, there's some information involved that is more legal support. It's a little bit more unique to your matter. And then legal representation is kind of what you see on TV, where there's a lawyer who supports you, stands beside you in court, and speaks for you and works with you. So those are the 3 areas that we provide services in. Before I continue, are there any questions for me?
Seems not.
Okay, perfect.
But
I'm
please
going
feel
to
free to note down your questions in the chat section or just, raise your hand or unmute yourself. Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
If
There is.
someone has a needs advisor, your service, it must be in person, or that person can get the service online, excuse me, by phone.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So you can come in to see us, which we consider a walk-in, or you can also call us. And we also have a web contact form, which I'll leave at the end of the presentation. So it basically is a way to contact us easily, if, especially if you prefer not to speak on the phone or English is their second language. Basically ask for your contact information, and then somebody at our clinic will call you back. And sometimes the phone is easier, especially with transportation.
And one more question: how you are checking if someone is eligible as a low income person?
Great question again. So our intake worker is the one who usually talks to people when you first make contact with our clinic, and they will do an eligibility questionnaire with you. So they'll ask the questions about income, it's family income, and let you know if you qualify. That being said, even if you don't qualify, we generally give information of where to go next. So, I mean, generally, sometimes I'm at the front desk and I won't turn anyone away. I'll say, I can't help you, but here's information where you can find your answers, and send them that way. So we don't turn anyone away.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, it's just a small question. Sorry, for getting to know, like, let's say, just like answer off with one small question, is still the person needs to be eligible, right? They cannot like call and just like ask, is it like this or not? Am I correct?
Generally, a question I can usually just answer.
Mhm.
However, it depends because our mandate is only to help tenants. So we kind of ask who the person is first. So if it's a
Okay.
landlord calling in and asking for questions, I'll say, I can't help you, sorry.
Ooh, got it.
I'm gonna send you this way.
Wonderful,
Here's who
wonderful.
you
Okay.
can call and ask that question.
Okay, wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Some simple questions are asked. Good question though. Thanks. So our legal areas consist of housing. That's our main area. So tenancy only. We can't help people who own property. Ontario Works and ODSP for people who have been disabled enough not to work. And then we have CPPD, which is a Canada Pension Disability Program. We also support in employment law and employment insurance. So that would cover, I'll get into this later, but if you're wrongfully fired from your job or if you're facing abuse at your job, that kind of thing. We provide some basic services in immigration and citizenship, but not refugee claims. So it's more like family sponsorship mainly that we deal with. Debt and consumer protection, which is, for example, like your phone bill doesn't look right and you've got collections coming after you, then we can support in that way. We support with name change and gender marker change for anyone who is looking to change the gender on their identification if they choose to change that. We have an Indigenous justice program who just supports Indigenous people who are status and non-status. And then we do provide some notarization and commissioning of documents. So for example, if anybody has ever seen a CPP, so Canada Pension Plan application, it needs a stamp from a lawyer to validate that it's a legal document. So that kind of thing. We do support with sexual harassment in the workplace, specifically in the workplace. And that is, I want to make a note that a lot of people think sexual harassment is just when you're being touched inappropriately, but sexual harassment can also mean a woman, for example, a woman who is being like oppressed because of their gender at work. So, for example, if I worked at Tim Hortons and the men were always like, you cook, you do all the cooking because you're a woman. I'm just going to stand here and make coffee. So if it's discrimination based on your gender or your sex, then it's also sexual harassment in the workplace. And lastly, we provide public legal education, which is what I am doing today, just providing basic information so you know some of your rights and hopefully lessens the chance of being oppressed in the workforce in life in general. But we do not practice in family law. So that would be like divorce, custody issues. We don't support in criminal law. So if someone else in the community has sued you, we wouldn't be able to help if you've committed a crime or someone has committed a crime against you, we can't support. And then we can make referrals to other branches of legal aid for some of the issues that we don't cover. So if you called me and said like, I'm getting a divorce, I don't know what to do, like, can you tell me? I would say, I can't help you here, but here's a number you can call and they should be able to help you there. So our mandate is based on this idea of a three-legged stool of stability. And I invite you to share your thoughts with me on this one. So I think there are three basic needs to maintain one person's well-being. And does anybody have a guess on what these three things might be? There's no bad answers. Feel free to unmute.
One is economy, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely money. Anyone else?
I think the other one should be the mental well-being, like
Yeah,
the mental and maybe physical well-being. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah,
So like health,
health,
general
exactly,
health. Yeah.
general.
And there's one more, if anybody can guess.
Oh, okay. I get, yeah, please.
Like
No, it's
still law safety.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I
So
think, yeah, the minor also was like similar, the relationship of you with like your environment, with people around you. So which is including, of course, the rules and regulations that you have to obey or you have to.
definitely, definitely, yeah. I always consider those things under health because mental health and physical health are so tied together. If your mental health isn't well, your body is going to also be sick. So yeah, I consider all that under health. The last one that we consider generally is housing. So if the three things, if you don't have these three things, money, a roof over your head, and good health, and I'm saying mental and physical health, then it's hard to balance our lives, you know? So if even if like as a mother, if my child is sick and I can't provide health care for my child, my stool is going to tip because I can't stay stable with that stress, without good health for my family members. And same thing with income. Like in our world, everything is getting so expensive. If we don't have money, it's really going to be very, very hard to be stable. Thank you for answering the
Thank
question.
you.
I I'm wondering if I'm gonna go over time. Is there a time that I should like cut off, Seville?
Be comfortable, like we have time until 10:30. We are all here for you. So
Perfect.
take your time.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to go over housing law for most of my presentation because it is our biggest area of law and also a really pressing concern in our community, Waterloo Region, right now. We are seeing a shortage, a crisis actually, of housing shortage, landlords taking advantage of tenants, people not knowing their rights and leaving their homes and then becoming homeless very often because they're being taken advantage of. So again, I'm just going to share what we can support with and some of your rights. So I want to introduce you to what's called the Residential Tenancies Act. Basically, that's law around housing. Each area of law has its own name. And so employment law would be covered under Employment Standards Act, and housing law is covered under Residential Tenancies Act. And when I say the act, I mean the law. So terminology, three words you need to know: landlord, tenant, and eviction. So the landlord is someone who owns property and is renting their home out to somebody else. A tenant is someone who is renting from the landlord. And then an eviction is basically when a landlord comes and says, you have to leave. They're kicking you out of the home. So those are three really important words you need to know. You need to know you have a right to fight back in a court, which is called the Landlord and Tenant Board, if you are being evicted from your home. So if your landlord shows up and says you need to leave by, I don't know, next month, you don't have to leave. So there are many rights to protect you and or delay the process before you have to leave. And you have a right to go to this court and explain to court why you don't think you should leave. It also covers repairs and maintenance. So a lot of people get taken advantage of when they move to Canada and their roof is leaking and they think, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. No one's going to pay for this repair. There's actually rules around that, how much repair and maintenance that your landlord has to upkeep. It also covers unlawful entry. So I hear this often, especially with newcomers, is they think that landlords can come to the house whenever, and that's not true. There's a lot of rules around that too. So I'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, your landlord cannot come in whenever they want. It covers harassment by another tenant or landlord. So if the people next door to you are harassing you in the hallway or in the elevator constantly or making noise constantly, that's all covered under the Residential Tenancies Act. It also covers illegal rent or charge. So we're hearing now that rent keeps going up and up and up. And some people don't know. So if the landlord tells them like next month you owe me $200 more, people think, oh, I have to give my landlord $200 more, but that's not the case. There's a guideline as to how much a landlord can raise their rent. So again, we'll get into that. And then arrears, which is if you owe rent to your landlord. So say I was really, really hurting and I couldn't pay my rent last month. This law also covers what your rights are around that. And then again, evictions notices. So for every reason that a landlord kicks you out or evicts you from a unit, there has to be a legitimate reason. And based on that reason, there is a different notice. So for example, there's a notice called an N12, and that is for when a landlord wants to take their unit back to move in themselves or move their family in. So I can't just show up and say, I need you to leave because I feel like it. They have to give a legitimate legal reason, and it has to go through the landlord and tenant board. And I'll explain that in a bit as well. And I just want to remind you, our clinic, WRCLS, only represents tenants and not landlords. I'm going to send this, if it's okay, this PowerPoint presentation to you, Shakur, and to Seville. If you can distribute it, that would be great. This is kind of a checklist that I've made for people to expect things before they rent. So number one, credit check. Unfortunately, in Canada, this is legal. So a landlord can do a credit check on you before they allow you to rent. And what we find really troublesome about this is a lot of people who move to Canada don't have Canadian credit. Of course, when my parents came to Canada, there's no credit. There's no track record of banking or anything like that. And so unfortunately, this is legal for a landlord to request, but I think it's not a good idea because it excludes a lot of people. You can expect a key deposit. So if you rent a new unit, the landlord might say, I need $200 for a key deposit in case you lose your key or in case I have to change the lock. That being said, it should be a reasonable amount. So how much does it cost to change or to get a new key? $10, right? $20 maybe. Maybe it costs them $200 if they have to change a whole lock, but it shouldn't be more than that. So if your landlord says, I want $1,000 key deposit, please call our clinic and we will do what we can to help you because that's very unreasonable. There's rules. So as a tenant, if you want to end your tenancy, so you want to move out, you have to give at least 60 days notice to your landlord. So you can't just overnight, I hate this place, pack up and leave, because then you owe your landlord rent still. If you get evicted, the landlord has to go through the proper channels, meaning the court, and only a sheriff, who is a special police officer, can remove you or your belongings from your unit. So at no point in time can a landlord walk into your unit and say, I'm moving your things, get out. They cannot touch your stuff. If that happens, I advise you to call the police because they're violating your rights. So you won't get in trouble. And the sheriff is a special police officer who is granted permission from the court to remove you, if it comes to that. Otherwise, no landlord should touch your stuff. Before you move into your unit, it's recommended that you take pictures in case of any allegations of damage for later. So if I move in, like when I was a student in college, I moved into my unit, I would take pictures of everything. Like if there's holes in the wall, if there's scratches on the baseboard, that kind of thing, in case my landlord says like, oh, you made this damage. I can show them, no, when I moved in, this was already here. And again, we talked briefly, but rent increases are regulated by the law annually. So each year, the government comes out with a guideline rate of how much rent can be increased. So last year, 2023, the rent increase rate was 2.5%. So if it went above that, then they're probably illegally doing it. I advise you to contact us. The rent increase guideline for this year, 2024, is also 2.5%. So again, if I'm renting a room for $1,000 and tomorrow my landlord says, I'm raising your rent to $1,500, that's probably illegal. And you can tell them, no, there's a guideline they have to follow, and they can only raise their rent 2.5% for the entire year. And they can only raise your rent once every 12 months. So again, if even with 2.5%, my landlord can't tell me tomorrow, I'm raising your rent 2.5%, and then 1 month later say, I'm also raising your rent 2.5%. That's not allowed. They can only raise the rent once every 12 months. For a legal rent increase, the landlord must provide what is called an N1. And I can show you an example later, but it is a white form that they have to fill out. It says notice of rent increase. They have to give you 90 days notice before your rent can be raised. So again, they can't tell you tomorrow I'm raising your rent. They have to give you 90 days notice. And once again, they can only raise your rent once every 12 months. If they don't give you an N1, the rent increase is not legal. So don't pay more. Come to us. We will support you. Yeah. Oh, I see something. Okay, thanks.
Don't worry about it, Angie.
Got it. Thank you.
Ask a question here, or do you want me to ask it at the end of the session?
Oh, sure. Please, yeah.
No problem. Now that we're talking about rent increase, I was wondering. So I've heard from a colleague. I didn't search it, unfortunately. So the house and buildings like that were built after 2017, according to the recent Dockford law in Ontario, it seems like they can increase, like landlord, they can increase as much as they can. Is it right?
Unfortunately, yes, this is the rule I didn't want to mention because it scares people. So it's actually November 15th of 2018. As of this date, if the unit is being occupied for the first time, so we're talking about new buildings or like new units that are available for rent. If it's being moved into for the very first time, as of November 15th, 2018, then yes, the landlord can increase to whatever they'd like. That was Mr. Doug Ford's idea. It's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And we are constantly advocating for that to be changed because 2018 is actually quite a while now. So a lot of people have moved into their unit for the first time now after that date. That being said, they're still restricted to only rent increasing every 12 months. So that rule still applies.
That rule is still there.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. So the ones that are gonna be the first occupant, like they're settling there for the first time. So it's not applicable for the, like, let's say the second people, right? Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep. So if the unit is brand new, basically, then yes, the landlord can raise it with their first tenants, only their first tenants, to whatever they'd like. However, they're still restricted to that 12 months. So even if they decide to increase it by a couple $100s, they can only do that once every year.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before I continue? Don't be shy. Okay, I'll move along. And again, if you come up with any questions, please stop me. So not to scare anyone, we're going to do a quiz. And I invite you to participate. There's no bad answers, no wrong answers either. Again, this is just to give you more information, and please share the information with people you know, because the more we learn, the more we know as a community, the more we can empower ourselves and our friends and family. So, okay, so is this true or false? Your landlord can evict you for having a pet. I don't know if anyone here has
think
pets.
it's false.
Yeah.
False. It's
false.
Sounds good. Anybody else?
When you're renting, there is a the landlord asking if you have pets. You cannot. I'm not going to give you the house or apartment. And if this is the case, I believe you cannot later on bring a pet, right?
So the answer is that's a good point. But the answer is false, and I'll explain. So a lot of landlords will put on their ads for their homes, no pets allowed. We see that very often. But actually, under the law, they're not allowed to. And this is what I mean. Some landlords actually don't even know the law. To be very honest with you, we often see landlords who don't know the law and are taking advantage of tenants. Not all, but some. And there's only stipulations around not having pets under the law if, for a few reasons, if it's a dangerous species. So for example, if my neighbor next door moves in and they have a pet snake and I'm really scared of snakes, or it's a poisonous snake, scary, then no, that won't be allowed. Like that, we can make a complaint against that and say like they have a dangerous animal next door, like I don't feel safe in my home, then that can become an issue. Another issue is noise, right? So if you have a dog who barks a lot, what can happen is, though you are technically allowed to have your dog, if it barks all times of the night or it's disturbing the neighbors, you can get a complaint. And if it escalates enough, it could lead to your eviction because of noise complaints only, though, not because you have a dog, but because the dog is loud. And then another reason is health concerns. So if you have a dog and you don't scoop up its poop all the time, or you're taking it to walk around the property and you don't pick up the poop, so cleaning after it. If it becomes a safety concern, then we might have some trouble. But actually, if you say on your application, nope, I don't have a dog, or no, I don't have a cat, so that you can get your unit and then later bring in a cat, there's actually nothing the landlord can do about it. They can complain, but most likely, unless there's a safety or noise issue, landlord can't actually get you in trouble, if that makes sense. Yeah. So again, landlords don't actually know all of the rules. So always try to learn the rules for yourself to protect yourselves. So we live in Canada, where we have our second winter right now. So the question is, it is legal to evict someone in the winter. Is that true or false? Anyone want to try?
True,
It's
because
false.
if
It's true.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is true. You're correct. Oh, there we go. You would think that in Canada, this year was actually a very warm winter, believe it or not. For anyone who's new to Canada, this was a very warm winter. Usually, we get negative 45 degree weather. So I have had a winter so cold that I went outside and my eyelashes froze. So in that case, it shouldn't be allowed to kick someone out of their home. It should be illegal. However, the law in Canada says, Canada and Ontario says, yep, that's allowed. You can technically remove anyone from their home at any time of the year. And that's okay. As long as the landlord goes through the proper channels, the proper steps, it's technically legal for them to evict someone at any time of the year. Sorry, one thing I forgot to mention. So each law usually is covered under the province. So that we have like provincial level and federal level. All the information legally that I'm sharing today is actually just under Ontario. So if you were to leave Ontario and move to, say, Alberta, then the law might be a little different. But just a heads up there. But yeah. Okay. Tenants are not required to sign a new lease annually. Is this true or false?
Not required. It's true. Yeah. Sign a new lease. I think it's true.
Oh,
It's false.
true.
Yeah. So
I
there's a
think
lot of
so.
confusion. I'm sorry?
I believe it is true, but in reality, when you are you are documenting in many applications, including driver license or many more, usually they are asking for a paper that is still alive this year. So
Sure.
actually, this is the tenant that usually asking, please let's resign it.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. So generally the law now says that landlords should be using a standard form of lease. This is a government issued form that they should have. It's basically a contract. And a lot of people think if they sign this contract, then every year they have to re-sign the contract to still be a tenant. And actually that's not true. Sorry. Yeah, they're not required to sign a new lease annually. So if I rent a new place and I sign, okay, yes, I'm paying my rent for 1 year. After that 1 year expires and the landlord gives me a new contract, I don't actually have to sign it. I'm still a tenant. And what would happen is if I don't sign it annually, I become a month-to-month tenant. So I would still pay my rent every month without a contract, essentially, but they can't remove me because I didn't sign my lease again. If that makes sense. So a lot of people are scared. They think that if they don't sign this new lease, then they're not a tenant anymore. That's not true. So you don't have to sign a new one every year. But yeah, to your point, Shapoor, it is important to have a contract that is alive to protect your rights as well. So we talked very briefly about this one. Your landlord can come into your unit whenever they want. Is this true or false?
Is it false?
False.
Nice.
False. False.
Thank you for listening. So again, I'm just going to review some rules about this. So your landlord is actually obligated by law to give their tenant, at least 24 hours notice before the time of entry. And this should be on written paper. So it can't be like, hey, I'm coming tomorrow. It should be in writing. Hello, I'm coming tomorrow at so-and-so time. This note must indicate the date, time, and purpose of the entry. So your landlord should have a very good reason why they're coming into your home. Like, I don't want people coming into my home whenever they want. So the landlord should be saying, okay, tomorrow at 6:30 p.m., I'd like to come in because I heard that your fridge is leaking and I'd like to take a look at the fridge to fix it. They should not say, hi, I'd like to see the home because I think you're messy. So that's not allowed. They have to indicate a legal and reasonable date, time, and purpose if they want to come into your home. And lastly, the time of entry must be between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So not, hi, I'm free tomorrow at midnight. Can I come over? No, has to be between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Should be reasonable for the tenant, right? This is so important to me because as a newcomers, I work with a lot of newcomers and they think that if the landlord like comes over and knock, knock, I'd like to come in. No reason, no letter, just hi, I'm here. I'd like to see my home. No, someone is renting and they have rights, right? So it can be like, you can give me 24 hours notice and come back then. There are a few situations, however, when the landlord can come in without notice. And that is, for example, an emergency situation. So if, say, my landlord lives next door and they smell my unit on fire or they smell like a lot of smoke and I'm not home, chances are there's a fire that's been started and they can come in to put out the fire. That's an emergency situation. Technically, that's okay. But it's not like, hey, I smell you cooking. I'm kicking your door down to come over. So again, emergency situation. So that could also mean a burst pipe. So in the winter, sometimes it gets so cold that our pipes freeze and burst. If that's the case, it's an emergency situation. They probably need to come in to fix that right away. They can also come in with your consent at the time of entry. So again, if it's a nice landlord, you trust them, they're really like kind, like reasonable people, they can come knock on your door and say, hey, I happen to be in the neighborhood. Can I come in to see the fridge? I heard that there's been issues with your fridge. You can, if you'd like to, give them permission to do that. If you choose not to, that's okay too. So don't feel the need to say yes. If there's an agreement, for example, student housing, a lot of times there's a contract between the tenant and the landlord to do house cleaning. So if there is such a contract, the landlord can come in without notice to fulfill that agreement. So say my landlord says, I come in every Thursday, I don't know what time, but every Thursday to clean the house. And that's in your contract, in your lease, then they're allowed to come in whenever. And if the tenancy has already been terminated, then they the landlord can come in whenever to show it to new tenants. So for example, if I've already said like I'm actually moving out in a week, the landlord can say, okay, I need to show the unit to new people, so I have renters after you leave, then they can come in whenever they'd like. However, by good practice, they should still give you notice, right? Nobody wants to come in, have guests over when they're in their pajamas or at home and watching TV. Does that make sense? Are there any questions about this one?
I have a question.
Sure.
Many people in Canada renting a room
Mm-hmm.
or apart. They're renting the room following the same law, or maybe a little different?
That's a very good question. So it usually does fall under the Residential Tenancies Act. So yes, it does fall under the law. There's a few circumstances where we get into like, is that covered under the law? Is it not? So for example, a student who is sharing a room with their landlord or in the same unit. So sorry, if they share a kitchen with their landlord, they use the same kitchen. It's a little iffy if that's a tenant that's covered under the law. So it really depends on the unit and who you're sharing with, that kind of thing. And if you call us for support, we would ask those questions. So yeah, I don't know if that clearly answers, but it really depends on where you're living. So say student housing. So we get people who have an apartment with 5 units and they rent all 5 rooms out to students, different students. The landlord doesn't live there, then all those students are covered under the law. However, if the landlord owns a house and there's like renting out one room, they still share a kitchen, then they might not. If that makes sense. Okay. This is a question we get asked very often in the summer. Your landlord can charge you extra for air conditioning. Is this true or false?
False.
It's false.
Okay, any other answers? Okay. It's actually true. Your landlord can ask for extra money for air conditioning. You have to read your lease with them very, very carefully. So your original contract with your landlord, read for if they're charging for air conditioning and how much. Or they're asking for every month, if you use the air conditioning during the summer, you'll pay me an extra $30. And the reason for this is many years ago, in an apartment building, somebody had those air conditioning units. That's like the big box that they put in the window. And what happened was it wasn't secured properly. The box fell and actually killed the little girl who was under the window. So basically, landlord said, this is a liability. Like, we can't govern everybody's air conditioning if they put it in without our consent or our knowledge. And it's a safety concern. Plus, there's a lot of extra electricity that goes into running an air conditioning unit. So basically the law said, okay, so then you can charge extra and you must know if air conditioning is being used in the unit. And you can then charge extra because it's not an essential service. So under the law, they think air conditioning isn't necessary for you to survive. But as we know, summers in Canada are getting hotter and hotter. And if there's a lot of people in the home, a lot of cooking happening, it actually can be a health concern. Getting too hot can be a really detrimental health problem. Then we can argue for you, like my clinic can argue for you that you need air conditioning and it shouldn't be charged, or we can minimize the charge. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, your landlord can charge you extra. Read your lease very carefully and know how much they're charging you if they are. Some landlords will say, nope, you can't have air conditioning altogether. And unfortunately, this is legal because of these liabilities that landlords have seen with air conditioning units.
Angie, I have a question. So it
Yeah.
is the case if the air conditioner is supplied by the landlord. Am I correct? It's not like by your own. Like if I provide it by my own, it's still I guess I need to get permission, but to install it. But I don't think that they can charge me, right? Because it's by myself. Like I'm providing it for myself.
So unfortunately, what I understand is that landlords, even if they provide the air conditioning, they can add, I am charging you to use this in your lease. So again, it's really important to read your lease carefully and make sure you know, so there's no surprises. But by law, they are allowed to charge extra for the use of air conditioning.
Got it. But it's again, it's in Ontario, right? It might be
It's
different
Ontario.
in under. So there is no rules and like such rules and regulations or in other ways. Let's put it, probably there is like big rules and regulations in federal, I'm just guessing, but such like detailed rules and regulations all belongs to the provincial, right?
Yeah. So all housing law is provincially regulated.
All housing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, we have a few more. I'm going to skip this one because it's very long-winded. Okay, so your landlord must go through the landlord and tenant board to evict you. Is this true or false?
I think it's true.
It's true? Yeah.
True to evict, yeah.
Yeah,
True.
you're definitely right. So once again, the landlord and tenant board is the court, basically the court system that regulates law around housing. So if a landlord wants to evict you, they have to fill out proper forms that are provided by the landlord and tenant board and give them to you in with the legal stipulations that come with it. They can't just come in and say, hey, you got to move tomorrow or next month. There has to be a form they fill out. Again, it has to have a reasonable purpose and clear reason why you're being asked to move. And that is all regulated under the landlord and tenant board. If you feel like, nope, I don't want to move, you can fight for yourself, fight for your case, sorry, at the landlord and tenant board. You have a right as a tenant to also make complaints against your landlord with the landlord and tenant board. So they're the court system that rules everything around housing. On our website, which I will leave in a bit, there are a lot of easy to understand tip sheets on all these areas of law or all these notices, sorry. So this was, for example, an N12, this little white form over here on the left side. This is an N12. So a landlord would use this form to remove or evict their tenant based on the fact that they or a family member wants to use the unit. They have to fill this out. It's actually 2 pages. And then only when they fill it out properly and have a good legal reason can it be legally processed. So again, like I can't show up and go knock, knock. Hey, my niece is moving into town. You need to move so my niece can have this apartment. That's not legal. They have to fill this form out. And as it says, they have to give you the date that they want you to move out very clearly in here and provide the reason. We also have tip sheets on how to read an eviction notice on our website and a lot of free tenant tip sheets and videos. So the videos are all subtitled because I like subtitles and explain a lot of these notices or these processes in a simple way. They're usually 5 minutes long each video. And then we have tip sheets for example, like entry into the unit by the landlord. So we were saying a landlord can come in with notice or without notice, and here's when. Again, repairs and maintenance issues. So we have all this on our website. And there's also a form that we have provided on our website. So if you're renting and you want to tell your landlord, hey, my stove is broken, my toilet is broken, my shower is leaking, you can tell them this you can tell them by phone or in writing, but I definitely recommend in writings and get a photocopy or a photo of that so you have proof. On March 31st, I contacted my landlord and told them about these issues and nothing was done. So you have a good record. And then on our website, there's also a form. I don't have it with me, but I can show you where you can just fill out and check box the problems that you're experiencing in your home and just give that to your landlord instead of saying, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. This form is just check boxes and you can just very easily give it to your landlord. Okay. It might be useful for me to show you. So I'm just going to pause 1 second. It is pretty useful. Sorry, give me 1 second. While I'm looking for it, does anybody have any questions or comments about those areas that I've just mentioned?
Any questions? Nope.
Perfect. Okay. Almost there. Okay. Woohoo! I found it. Okay. And I will resume my share. Okay. Oh, I crashed. Okay. So this is the repair request form for tenants, and this is totally free on our website. Again, I will leave that at the very end of my presentation. Instead of writing to your landlord, hi, my sink is broken, my shower is leaking, my fridge is leaking, this request form makes it a lot more simple for the landlord and for you as a tenant. So again, it just asks you to list your landlord's name, what your name is, the date, address, unit, that information. And then you can start just to check the areas that you need fixing. So again, instead of saying my shower is leaking, check the bathtub, check the shower. And again, I highly recommend you make a photocopy or take a picture of this after it's filled out, so you have a record of when you talk to your landlord. It's 2 pages. Again, this is all free on our website. If it's useful to you, please use it. And okay. And then quickly, so that concludes my section about housing law. Those are just very, very basic rules. But because I think this is really important for newcomers, I want to very quickly cover employment law. So just like housing law is covered under the Residential Tenancies Act, employment law is covered under Employment Standards Act. And it covers stuff like unlawful dismissal. So that's being fired wrongfully, unpaid hours. So if I worked 40 hours and my employer said I worked 20, there's something wrong. And we definitely can take them to court for that. So our clinic can support with that. We have human rights issues. So racism, discrimination based on sex, culture, religion, all that covered under employment law. Hours and rates of pay. So in Ontario, there is a minimum wage. And right now it's sitting, I think, at $16.50, if I'm not wrong. Thanks, Phil. So again, like if you're working legally, your employer should be paying you at least $16.50 per hour. That being said, there are contracts that sometimes you might see a difference. So salaries, so that might change your pay a little bit, but rates of pay should be standardized at $16.50 an hour. And then again, harassment in the workplace. So if your boss is calling you after hours constantly and bugging you, hi, I know you're off the clock, but you need to come into work. It's urgent. You know, if they're doing that constantly, it's kind of harassing because I have a family, you have a family. You don't want to be bugged at all times of the day, and or being like talked down to at work. That's not nice. So some rules around that Employment Standards Act is it's intended to provide basic minimum rights to all workers in Ontario. And so therefore, workers are not to work more than 8 hours per day or more than 44 hours a week. Sometimes that's not possible. If this happens, the worker should get overtime pay, which is 1.5 times the regular rate of pay. So if I made $20 an hour and I worked over 44 hours for the week, I should be making $30 an hour for that week. A worker should be given a break every 5 hours they work. So if I worked from, say, 8 to 4 p.m., at 1 p.m., I have to be entitled to one break that is at least 30 minutes long. And the employer doesn't have to pay for that, but they have to give you a break. Does that make sense? Are there any questions that I can answer about this? Okay.
Systems, no. I wanted to just add, hopefully, Angie, you are also taking time to break. You said that you are sleepless. Hopefully, you're also taking the break and you are gonna rest, hopefully, after this event.
Yes, I was woken up very, very early by my 3-year-old niece today, so I will definitely need to rest after.
Good, good.
She opened my door very, very
Aw.
early. Thank you, though, and you as well.
Thank you.
So again, I will leave you with this information. Other than our legal clinic, there is a lot of online and phone accessible resources that can give you more information about your legal rights. One is called Clio. It's actually governed by our clinic system, has very clear, accurate, up-to-date information about your legal rights. Steps to Justice is another website, very easy to understand. So you go to the website, you give them, press the area of law you're asking about, and then it answers questions like very, very simple, in a very, very simple way. So again, Law Society Referral Services, Legal Aid Ontario, and Pro Bono, which is a free advice hotline that generally gives up to 30 minutes free legal advice. Not in all areas of law, but in many. So again, I encourage you to check it out. I will leave this presentation with you. And then our clinic itself, we have a website. And thank you, Seville, for putting it in the chat. I have here the link for the web contact form. So that can speed up your process of getting in contact with our clinic and give us the basic information of what you're looking for. We can also be accessed by phone, or you can walk into our main office at 450 Frederick Street. It's near Frederick Mall across the street. And then we have an office all the time in Cambridge at the Langs building. It's a central hub. And then again, this is our link to our YouTube channel. And we also have social media, Facebook, Instagram, now X, but it was Twitter. I don't like the name X. So that's our handle, WR Legal Services. So again, are there any questions?
I think we have asked so many questions from you. Hopefully you're not
No
tired,
problem.
so throughout the presentation.
No problem.
But is there any questions? You can also note it down in the chat section. Anyone?
Actually, I had an important question. I forgot.
Sure.
I don't know it is count or not. Yeah, I had a very important, but suddenly I forgot. Let me see what was that. Yeah, next time.
Sure.
One person is asking. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
The person is asking good question in the chat section. So the person is asking, what if you have a visitor? Do you have to inform the landlord? Like, is there any law under it or no? Like, yeah.
Very, very good question, Dina. Thank you. No, you don't have to inform your landlord if you have a visitor. That being said, there is a tip sheet on this, actually. I created them, so I'm super proud of it. But yeah, you don't have to inform your landlord, but there are a few legal concerns about that. So you are, as the tenant, are responsible for your guest, their behavior when they're visiting you. So yeah, you're allowed to have your cousin or your brother or your friend or son over. However, if your son causes issues in the building, then you as a tenant are responsible. So if your son destroys property in the building, then you as a tenant are responsible for the damages, not your son, because they're your guest. So yeah, you're allowed, but again, there's some legal stipulations around having guests.
I remember.
Sure.
When you are going to rent somewhere,
Mhm.
usually the tenant, the landlord asking for reference. Is that legal or not legal?
It is legal. But again, with reason, right? So if they're asking for 10 references, I can't get you 10 references. I can give you 3 maybe. And again, with reason, right? So if they're asking for, I need 5 employers' references, what does that have to say about my ability to rent, right? You need 2, 3, maybe maximum, and maybe a personal reference to show you have good character. But everything should be within reason. If you question the reasoning for that, again, give my clinic a call. We can give you some advice or some information about that. If you feel like your rights are being violated, that might be legitimate. So always seek help and get the information. Don't be shy. Because when we stay silent is when we get taken advantage of, right? So I encourage you to reach out. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
I will also leave my email at the end of this presentation. Sometimes people are shy in a public space like this, and they don't want to ask their private question. I am welcoming to emails. Please go ahead and send them. I'm a bit slow to respond because of our workload, but I definitely can get back to you.
Wonderful, Angie. Thank you so much. And if you can send me also the slides, it would be wonderful.
Yes,
So I can send
definitely.
it to everyone. Thank you so much. Like these are wonderful information, like for getting to know them, especially as an immigrant. Like you have to, if you even find the documents, just you have to go over and over a million pages, and then probably you're not gonna be able to find the right answer, and you wouldn't be able to know even it's the right answer or not. So these are wonderful information, and thank you so much. It was wonderful.